let's just, and here we go. Oh, 2024. It's already starting off. Hey, all you freedom loving boys and girls, welcome to Mission Critical Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Mark, and that guy over there,
Redbeard.
And then down on the musical squares tonight, we've got Better Call Paul. Hey, if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you know, now more than ever, we've been saying it for, this is our 40th episode. We've been saying it for almost, 40 episodes, but we're going to kind of cover this a little bit tonight. But holy crap, you are the resistance. We all need to be the resistance. If we even want the remotest chance of freedom to survive, and I mean true freedom, not the people who are saying, I need to destroy your democracy in order to save democracy. Well, you know, we're a constitutional republic, but put that aside. But no, this isn't the I need to tear it down in order to save it. This is if you want to see freedom ring this year. And hell, you know, I'm just going to start this podcast off before I even let everybody else talk here. You know, Jeremy's heard me say this a million times. You know, if there's a debate, if there's a question, well, and you and one other person are on opposing sides, well, only one of you can be right. Somebody is wrong and somebody's right. And I really hope, and we'll get into this. I hope if you are positive and everything's rosy and rainbows and unicorns, I hope you're right. I really do. But my fear is that it's me. I'm the one who's right. And that'll be a little bit more self-evident as we go into it. Jeremy, Paul, you guys want to do a quick little intro like that? And then we're going to do the Mad Minute, just because it's the new year. And, you know, and I'm already starting this one off a little bit weird.
Yeah, Paul, if you want to take it first.
Yeah, so
hi, Happy New Year, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, so Happy New Year. I'm happy to be and proud to be a part of the Mission Critical Podcast as a guest and a frequent guest. I really do feel that this is grounded and it is accurate and it's fair, and there's really just there's no concerns. You know, I know YouTube gets all crazy and stuff. We truly care about and love this country. And, you know, we're looking to, you know, discuss things so that hopefully you engage and we can have those interactions throughout the year of 2024, which I believe may be a rough year. And I hope I'm wrong. But I do,
hey, you know, but somebody's got to be right, and I hope it's not me. You know, I hope it's not you as well, right?
Yeah, I hope so. So what am I going to do, right? Of course, I'm going to continue to participate in this. I don't really have resolutions, but what I do, and this technically could be one, I plan on prioritizing more, scheduling more, because I find that when I do that, I can get in more things. And I've been failing at that for, you know, the last few years. I don't know. Maybe it's because, you know, everything's crazy and you know, the meetings that you have, since they send everybody to work from home and then they want you to come back to work. And you know, now, you know, okay, well, I retrofitted my house to accommodate your mandate for me to work from home. And now you want me to come back in, those kind of things. And I'm not saying that directly impacted me, because it didn't, but it impacted a lot of my friends and coworkers, and it bothers me. So I'm going to prioritize and schedule so that I can get things done. And I believe it will allow me to, you know, I might say, well, you know, I didn't go to church this week. I didn't go to church for a month because I can't fit it in. What kind of excuse is that? You know, and that's my personal thing. So I need to schedule more and say, you know what, I do have a lot of work to do this weekend. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I schedule around so that when I can do this, I can prepare for that, prepare for work, do something at night. You know, I'm up, you know, look, we sleep 6 hours max. You know, if I'm lucky, because I'm old and I wake up in the middle of the night anyway. But you know, I want to make sure that I do things like that because, again, too many things fall through the cracks. I want to fill those cracks and do things that I need to do. And that includes this, you know, we need to be engaged here. We absolutely need to be engaged. Otherwise, you know, I heard over the holiday, people said that if they take Trump off the ballot, they're not going to vote.
You're jumping into the podcast. And just slow your roll, Dragon.
Yeah, so I'm good. That was my wake up call there. You know?
Yeah, because I'm here to tell you, boys and girls, it's going to get a little spicy because what was that? How many nights was that? That wasn't
Two nights ago.
Was it New Year's Eve?
Yeah, well, it was Monday, I think.
New Year's Day.
Yep.
Well, that was just yesterday. It wasn't yesterday. It was 2 days ago that we had the big conference. It was Saturday or Sunday. It was either New Year's Eve or the day before. So here's the deal.
Yeah.
The three of us had a conversation, and there were sparks. We did not all agree, and we were on the phone for almost like
Saturday. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we were on the phone for a long time, and before we all then kind of came to, well, and we left it open-ended, and that's what we got going on for this podcast right now. So we'll get into that in a second. But before we're jumping into it, Jeremy, and before we do the Mad Minute, again, just trying to have a little fun. It's New Year's Eve. You got any little words of wisdom or anything that you want to spout out to everybody before we start kicking it and start getting spicy?
I guess my biggest thing is, albeit we appreciate each person that, views our episodes and takes the time out of their day to watch our episodes. I would actually implore that to some degree you spend somewhat less time sitting down and watching stuff and more time going out and doing stuff, because you can sit and watch us and listen to all you want and this, that, and the other thing. And while we might be able to provide some perspective doesn't get off of its butt and do things. And so, we need to get more in line with the idea of actually getting active and getting out and doing stuff. It's not enough to just sit around and nod your heads in agreement or nod your heads in disagreement, whatever it is. If you agree with something, then ask yourself why you agree with it, and then see if you still agree with it. And then if you do, then go out and do something about it. If you disagree with something, ask yourself why you disagree with it. And if you still disagree with it, then go out and do something about it. Like that, in the end of the day, this is all good and fine, but I would implore each person to actually not sit in front of their computers or their phones or anything like that, and go out and do something about the problems that are ever present in your own neighborhoods, in your own communities and stuff like that, because you're needed out there. You're not needed sitting in front of a computer. And so that's my message. It's not to be brash, but it is kind of putting out there like, well, we do appreciate it. We very much do appreciate the time that you set aside for us. Our biggest thing is getting people out and doing stuff. So I'm going to leave it at that.
And that's going to be a lot more evident as we get into the gist of this podcast, which we decided we were going to call In With the New Year, Same as the Old Year. So 2024, I really hope everybody had a great 2023. If you're like, me, I can only speak for me, but what I think is a large number of other Americans, I remember making a joke about 2020, saying 2020 could suck it. Oh, no. These guys know, like, I'll go back to 2020, like, not in the bullshit, way, but like my thing is like, if we can ever get back to Biden, I just did it. Obama era economics, will be lucky in our lifetimes, but that's what's going to come out, that kind of conversation. That's the gist of tonight's podcast. In with the new year, same as the old year. Is that a fair statement? Is it hyperbolic? Is this going to be, I've already seen some people who are saying that 2024 is going to go more in the direction of freedom. We're going to get into that. We'll see. And again, it kicked off one of our spiciest phone calls that we've ever had here. And that was just a few days ago. Jeremy, why don't we do this? Why don't we just go clockwise around? Let's go you for the Mad Minute and then come to Paul. And then I'm going to end and I'll end it with the Mad Minute. And then you can and then once I do that, then we'll get into, do we need to interfere with our democracy in order to save our democracy kind of argument?
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Take us away.
So mine's pretty simple. And it's actually, I'm just going to base it off of some of the emails that Mark sent me. One of which was pertaining to NATO. I don't know if people realize it or if they like their grandeur of delusion, perhaps, but NATO is not doing well right now. There's a lot of hemorrhaging. There's a lot of issues, very many unresolved issues that are coming to light. And you're starting to see countries that are becoming very disagreeable with, I guess, the SOP that NATO is, and they're just running out of stuff. Like countries have basically given up their sovereignty for the sake of an organization that has nobody's best interest in mind, other than the benefactors that reside over NATO. And the other thing that I would like to kind of put out there too is Mark happened to send me something regarding red flag laws in Minnesota. That's self-explanatory. Everybody knows that red flag laws are nothing but political posturing and basically the okay slip for them to unconstitutionally take firearms from people, and to be able to conduct warrantless seizures. And it's a total abridgment of our rights and liberties. So that goes without saying. Minnesota is going down very, very fast, and it's why I'm not staying here, and and it's why Mark is not going to stay here. So I'm going to leave it at that. Oh, you're muted, Mark.
Are we going to have that episode again? Mark, you're muted. Mark, you're muted. Mark, you're muted. I better be trying to get better at the whole interface here. So
I'm gonna get a noise button for you.
There you go. Yeah. Beep. All right. But what I was just trying to say is what Jeremy just spoke of there. Again, we're trying to do the Mad Minute, little condensed, but that's going to probably come up in this episode, and if not, in probably one of our very next ones, because again, trying to offer solutions. And somebody might say, well, you guys are being hypocritical. You're leaving Minnesota. You should stay and fight. I think at the point that what Jeremy's trying to bring up is like, there's no fight left here. This is, you have to concede defeat and just move on someplace where you can still have.
And I can actually expound upon that from a personal level, because I've been a part of the fight here, and there's many sides to that.
Hey, okay. Well, then how about do a little short intro? So when we come all the way back around and we get into tonight's topic, how about you start us off with just a little bit? Okay, what does that mean, right? Because that's going to become more evident as we have this conversation. Right. So does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Paul, Mad Minute, sir.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use my Mad Minute to respond to Jeremy, because I think it's relevant. I can use my Mad Minute down the road as a topic, but NATO's obvious. Trump exposed that, and we're paying a lot of money, and nothing's happening. And we can go into more details on that. But I did want to respond to red flag laws. By the way, I do believe we should disband or pull out of NATO. Let's leave it at that. Red flag laws, and I left Maryland. I did leave before then, so technically I want to be 100% honest. But they were, I don't know if they're one of the first. I know that I'm double checking here all the states that have red flag laws, and Maryland was one. And I swear, within 2 or 3 months of the red flag laws being implemented, it was not, an ex-spouse or a spouse, a divorcee or divorcee, whatever they are, reporting someone just to get them in trouble. It was, they ended up having some guy, and he got killed because they came to his door with guns, and he's like, I don't know who the heck you are. You're plain clothes, and he had a gun on him, and he ended up getting killed. Nothing ever happened with that. Okay, nothing ever happened with that, and I find that disgusting. Because did the guy do anything? I don't know. But if he did, what could you have done? Arrest him and then take care of the process from that point. That's the way we work in this country. That's the way our Constitution works. It's not about somebody says this person's a danger. They also say if you're a danger to yourself. So if somebody claims you're suicidal, then they can also come in and take guns. And they confiscate guns and don't return them. So who can report? With Maryland, I can only speak for that because, I'm familiar with that state a little bit more. You can't just be Paul the neighbor and report somebody. You'd have to go through the right path there, the correct path. And hey, I'm afraid of this. Of course, that might be swatting, which at the same time is also bad. But almost anyone that is related or has been related. So there is a case of, you have a jealous ex-husband or a jealous ex-wife or something, they can do that and they can kick off the process.
Yep.
So I just want to say that I think that red flag laws are the most unconstitutional laws that we have that I can think of.
constitutionality. That's just another. I mean, I'm glad to see you guys kind of feeding off each other, because when we had that conversation, it was, it's kind of me against the two of you, and not in a bad way. It just is what it is. But I think you guys were really, really doing a good job of bringing out that Constitution. I know, what a crazy thing, the Constitution, what a horrible document, that pesky little document that keeps
weird
away, right? So, but I guarantee you that's going to come up here again a little bit tonight. All right, here's my Mad Minute, starting at 15:30. Look here. So this is actually more of resolutions, and I'm not a resolution guy. It doesn't have to be New Year's Eve. Do a resolution whenever you wake up, and in the span of 7 breaths, it's something that you should do. So here's one: mean people are folks. Like, I just saw this stupid thing about some lady in a McDonald's going off because they gave her food and it was wrapped in a blue and white wrapper. And she's taking offense. She's pro-Hamas. She's like, this is Israel's flag and all this, and yelling at and berating the employee. Anybody like that in my life or my sphere, whatever, that's just getting cut away, right? Israel didn't invent the colors blue and white. Greece. I'm going to screw this up. Greece,
Finland too.
Is it Finland or Sweden? Yeah. No, Sweden's blue and yellow, but you see what I'm saying? There's a shit. Argentina. There you go. That's what I was thinking. There's a, who invented it? And then to take it out on the poor person at the McDonald's. If you really got an issue, take it up with McDonald's corporate. That $1 billion company. They'll listen to you. But all you're doing is like, I got no time for that shit this year, and I'm not putting up with anybody in my life that way. Social media. No, see, I'm already over my minute. Okay, but I'm going to wrap this up real quickly, because this will probably come up later. Social media, both for Mission Critical Podcast, but more importantly for my business, how I put eggs in my refrigerator, gas in my vehicle every now and then. I'm really approaching social media differently, because that's another thing that's kind of to what both of these gentlemen just said, that we've got some really borderline issues going on, and it really saddens me that nobody on the Democratic or Republican side of the aisle seems to give a shit about it. That goes into Sam Bankman-Fried. I hope we bring him up tonight. Faith, I'm a Christian. Hate me, call me whatever you want, because I'm a Christian. But faith is also goodwill, and it's and it's acts, and it's kindness. And I'm going to start bringing more of that positivity back into my life, because whether we die in a nuclear holocaust or, zombie apocalypse, I'm going to go. And when I'm at that point, I'm going to feel pretty comfortable about who I am. And I always have been. And on that means back into, I mentioned social media, but way more books. You got to start reading a whole lot more books. This kind of echoes what Jeremy says. We really appreciate and love you guys being here to watch this. But at the same time, go do your own things, with friends, talk about God, talk about, your relationships, read books, learn a new skill. Hey, these guys just saw it. I just made another batch of cookies, homemade, way better than the grocery store. And I'm mixing, messing around with the ingredients, and, this, oatmeal cookies. I did a little honey. I did a little Ovaltine. Paul, you want to show your Ovaltine?
I don't have Ovaltine, but I do have my,
he has the secret decoder ring.
I have the secret decoder ring from, use Black Sky.
There you go.
So that's Ralphie's, and I believe that's a 1940 decoder ring that I happen to have next to me. I swear we didn't plan this,
but that's he got it out of Ovaltine. But anyway, but that kind of stuff. And then my final one is, I used to listen to music all the time in the shop. I was cutting materials, cutting webbing, punching holes through stuff. So I'm going to make, and I'm also having a little bit of fun here. You guys can tell. So I'm going to share with you 10 seconds of, and this is the end of my Mad Minute, or my resolution, if you want to call it that. But I'm going to get music back in my life. But what I really love is I love live music that sounds better than the record, right? So here you go. You guys, one of my pledges, I'm going to listen to this song once a week. Here we go. Here we go. When people could really sing without all the techno bullshit. All right. So a dumb little clip. I'm having fun trying to work with the software and figure things out. But I'm here to tell you, music, and that was live. And, that probably sounds like crap coming over this video and the software and my little tiny computer that I use for this stuff. But you go and play that in your home theater surround sound, and you're like, oh my God, that was like the best live. Like, I wish I would have seen that show. And there's so many other bands that that really sound actually better live than they do recorded, and everything just seems so fake. And I guess that's my final thing, and that'll kind of tie in where we're going. So that's a great little segue. I must have planned it that way. I'm just tired of all the fake stuff in life. How about that? Yeah. So my resolution is no more fakeness in my life. All right, Redbeard. I know you wanted to. Does that help with your segue? Because I mean,
it's I'm just going to kind of pick up. Elaborating kind of the being involved in things and how it, like, I don't know if Mark and I had explained this. I think we did at one point, but my choice to leave Minnesota it wasn't something that came up abruptly. It was something that took time. It was incremental. I really had to make some pretty pretty thoughtful deductions as to why I would leave, and where would be a better place. And it's not, for me, it's not so much running away. It's actually quite the opposite. It's knowing where I'm not wanted. I had spent a couple of years in being involved in certain groups that were about liberty and the Constitution in Minnesota. I was fortunate enough to be able to be involved at a national level as it pertains to that, but more specifically in Minnesota, I did a lot for the people that were in my particular area. And, I planned events. I had meets probably every other weekend to every weekend. I would coordinate meeting times. I'd coordinate where we would meet, what would be at the meets. I would have workshops. I would get people from different skills and backgrounds and skill sets to try and come together and teach these things. And so it really was a big deal. And it started out really good because people were like, oh yeah, like this is awesome, and so on and so forth. Well, it's where people have the issue is when there's a certain amount of standard.
I'm trying to just give the arm and hand signal. Did you guys freeze up, or was it just me?
Probably just you.
Well, okay, I hope the recording goes for it, but just in case, if it wasn't my side, can you just back it up like 30 seconds and do that little bit again? It froze up right there as you started getting saucy.
Yeah, so basically, like I said, I presided in a position to where I had several people in my particular area, and we would have meets. I would go through and plan meets. I'd plan the times, I'd plan the places. I would figure out who would be able to do a workshop or teach a skill set. It would range everything from range time to educational courses pertaining to the Constitution, learning how about your rights and liberties, and so many other things. We had medical people, we had firearms people, we had people that were really good at mechanics, we had people that were really good at all different sorts of things, and people from all different walks of life. Well, what people didn't like, however, is the level of commitment that was expected. So what started out was being a very active thing eventually started to peter out, because when people started to realize that this takes time and effort, people stopped wanting to show up. And and we had requirements and we had certain standards, which you had to attend X amount of meets and stuff like that. Otherwise, you would be suspended and put on probation. And, and people didn't like that. And look, in the end of the day, myself and many of the people that I had the great fortune to work with in trying to keep this all together, we tried. But the problem of it is when you have people that all they show like a lot sexier things or things that are much easier to do versus like actually putting an effort to make a difference. In mind you, like we had set up rallies, we had set up a lot of other forms of things to get active in, not just meets, but actually getting involved. People just started shying away from it, and unfortunately, it got so bad. And I will say this, like it leading up to the Trump election, that's when a lot of people stopped giving a shit. They just hopped on the Trump train, and they just thought he was going to be the savior. And it was at that point in Minnesota when I realized these people don't give a shit. They don't care. They don't want to be involved. They just want someone else to fix their problems for them. And after that, I ended up walking away, which was very, very difficult because at that point, I had put in the better part of 3 to 4 years in this organization. We had built a lot of roads. We helped with disaster relief around the country. We had sent supplies. I mean, we had done so much and brought so many great people together. And then people, because somebody shows up on the scene that makes them promises, they don't care. And, so my decision to leave Minnesota was predicated more or less on where I perceive the average person in Minnesota to be. And that's not being negative about the people here, because there are good people here. Don't get me wrong. But in the end of the day, we just don't have the gusto right now to have a meaningful movement that's going to change anything. And I want a family, and that I want to have a business, and I don't want to have it here. Unmute yourself, Mark. Damn
it. All right. That's twice now already tonight. So I was just saying, just slow down a second. Because we're getting into it. And so if everybody kind of sees, we're kind of building ourselves up to actually have the meat of the conversation here. But I want to give Paul a chance to respond to some of the things you just said before we go too deep and already get into the meat of it. Because look, because the one thing that, hey, look, if the shoe fits, if somebody's watching this and if they got mad at you, like, oh, that's, like, well, then Jeremy's clearly not talking about you. Right. So then water off a duck's back, then move on. Right. But if this hurts you at some emotional level, well, is it because that maybe he's right? I mean, like that was part of our conversation and our exchange from the other night. And that led into what I think was a really good human conversation. Right. So again, not going into resolutions, but more of an introspective. What can I do as a man? What can I do better? Right. We've had these podcasts too. So,
and if I may, real quick, Mark, I would say people perhaps are not resolute enough in what they believe.
Yeah.
Not yet, but it is changing, but not yet here.
Paul, do you want to just add to that before because this is a nice little, we're segueing right into the actual kicker. So you want to add anything right there before we start getting deep?
Yeah, I would like to say I hope you're wrong there, but you are right with the being resolute. But going back to what you said, I'm in a different field, right? I'm in a tech job, and there was a chance that I could have gone to Bemidji, and because they have, the high-speed internet and technology preparations, and it was a thought there that what. The area, fine, great, but the politics are just, not there. And it was a matter of, do I want to do that and be restricted or not? So I get it. I almost moved there, and I understand why you wanted to leave. But the other thing is that in some way, we're both educators. And so all three of us are educators, right? We all care. We want to pass on information to others, whether it's in an official training class or something else. I do that on the tech side. And, at this point, though, I'm running across in my area a lot of people that want to learn because there are careers there. But as far as learning what Jeremy's talking about, many don't want to learn. Or in my area, they don't want to learn. Some of them, most do, but some don't want to learn. They just want that, all right, I got my degree, I passed that exam, I expect my 6-figure salary, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
And, you know, what I've had, you know, I have discussions with, you know, a lot of my students, my own children. If you graduate from college, you are the lowest level of your profession. You're just out of school. If you think that you're an expert because you took classes, you're crazy. And so, you know, experience matters. To take jobs, do those type of things, participate, network, all that stuff. You have to put in the hard work. And people, well, I think Gen Z might be catching on. I know I get on the generations and stuff, but all the young people are starting to catch on at this point.
Right.
And I think they want to, they realize, hey, you know what, I need to learn because now I owe X amount of thousands of dollars in education bills. And now I can only get, you know, a job at wherever, but I can't work in the profession I want to be in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that hits home quite a bit, Paul, because I mean, I feel like that's a conundrum. I think to a certain degree, we've kind of all encountered. Mark, I'm sure you have, I have. That's kind of a swift kick in the nuts.
Hey, I you know, and as I get better, you know, boys and girls, we don't ever rehearse this except for like, you know, 5-10 minutes of, and that's usually one of us talking too long about some other bullshit story as opposed to getting ready for the podcast. You know, see tonight as a clear example, Jeremy. But as I get better at this, like I want to pull up a social media of you know, a young person who comes out in her video and says, yeah, I know everybody's going to slam me and you're going to say I'm an entitled and you know, and I'm not. But then she proceeds to talk about how difficult it is, you know, to Paul's point. I'm just getting out of college. I acknowledge I'm at the beginning stages of my career, you know, in my profession, but damn, if I can't even make money to pay rent and buy a car, you know, and so I think that is something that a lot of people, both young, middle-aged, and old, you know, like me and off, you know, over here. But no, I think that is I think that is an issue and a sentiment that a lot of people are feeling because, you know, the last 3 years have sucked. I mean, you know, like, so here, I just want to, and then I got to go into a question for you. Well, you know, and then we'll kind of maybe just kick it off. But look, you know, I'm really hesitant to say this over on Centerline Systems, you know, because I don't want to say that on my business, you know, YouTube or my, you know, that's where I market. But man, you know, people are only thinking about inflation. You know, like inflation's been going on since 2019. And as a business, I've been seeing that and feeling it. I didn't raise my prices for over 2 years. And then 2023 happened. And then you're just scrambling just to keep one nostril above water. You know, like, so, you know, I'm sitting here as a small business owner and I'm like, oh my God, what, you know, how did we do this? How is this going to work? You look at the recent, you know, madness and how that was, you know, in my opinion, see, I'm jumping ahead now. I'm the guy guilty. But I think the recent, you know, madness was designed to destroy small business in America.
Yeah.
You know, and then you take that young kid. So I'm just kind of bringing it to Paul's point. You know, I think to some extent, though, it's legit. We shouldn't discount it. You know, and I'm actually, Jeremy, that's a feather in my hat due to you from our conversation the other night. It's like, you know, yeah, maybe there's a large percentage of the population, you know, in Minnesota, in America, in the West writ large, that think everything should be given to them. You know, to kind of Paul's comment, hey, I just went through university. I accrued maybe $60,000 to $200,000 in the debt, depending on what your degree is and where you went. And now you're coming out there and now you can, even though you're working like your starting pay is 60, 75,000, maybe even more, again, depending on where you are, but you're finding yourself like, okay, well, that buys me a small apartment in, you know, in Midtown. And you know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are feeling this kind of what 100%. Right now it's nebulous what we're talking about, but I think a lot of people are feeling something's not effing right. And I think, you know, I just wanted to plug in there because, you know, that was my takeaway from talking with you guys the other night on the phone is like, and that doesn't make that other person wrong. You know, feelings are feelings. They're not objective fact. But there's still something to be said to that, you know, that, and again, I wish I was better at it already. I'd pull up the, whatever it was, TikTok or X or Twitter or whatever it was. And, you know, cause I mean, she was just basically laying out her soul. She's like, I want to work and, you know, and I'm doing this, but I can barely afford rent and a car. And, I get to go out with my friends once a month.
Yep.
You're young. You want to go out with your friends all the time. And that's where, as we as a society, we should be working towards that, right? Shouldn't people have some leisure time? But I don't want to take us down this rabbit hole, but leisure time doesn't mean, I was working at Twitter before Elon took it over. And basically I'd show up at 10 o'clock after I slept in, and there would be this breakfast bar, and then I would hang out and drink wine. That's not work. But that's a little different. That is a sense of entitlement. But now I'm going to tie this into what we're saying. There's a reason I was going down this road. But the way we're going politically right now, and when we go into government employees, we are creating some type of new caste of individuals in the tech spaces, in the government spaces, in the law enforcement spaces, in the military spaces, who don't think they have to work. That's for you peons to do, so we can tax you. So because I'm the smart, I'm the intelligentsia, I'm the, I'm jumping ahead. We'll get into this if we talk about continuity of government tonight. That isn't designed to help protect me and you, the citizens of America. That's designed to protect Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi, so they can, be kings of the ash pile once it's all over. I know I just kind of rambled a little bit there, guys, but I just had to say that because what Paul was saying, I thought that tied in with you, Redbeard. Do you guys want to respond to that at all? Or because otherwise to me, I think there's still a way to segue that into with the interfering with democracy.
Yep. I'll let Paul go first, and then I'll add something. So.
Okay. All right. Paul?
No, I think I can add to the other things. The only thing I want to add to something that was said before by you, Mark, and I'm not sure if Redbeard is old enough to know, but if you remember the mean people suck bumper stickers that people used to have on their cars, I mean, that was just a joke because it was anybody. And that is proof that this mentality existed back when I was young. Unfortunately, those people are they have a lot of power through the media and government and so on. And let me clarify for those that don't know. So mean people suck was, it was a way to say, if you don't, they may not have thought that, but I know it because I was not one of those. I'm not a mean person just because I disagree with you. It was basically, if you don't agree with our beliefs, you're a mean person and you suck. And that's all it really was. And they may disagree with me today, and they have that right. That's their First Amendment right. But I can tell you right now, that was not about me being mean. I was not mean. I just didn't agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
That was 80s and 90s, by the way. 1980s and 90s.
Yep.
All right, Redbeard, you got something to add to that?
Yeah, it's actually kind of just real quick on what you said. I think unfortunately we have we have many generations that have just this kind of I don't know if uncanny ability or how you would describe it, but essentially what we see, especially as it comes from like the boomers and even before them, right? Because the boomers got it the same way that it's been passed down to other people, but generations have a tendency to levy all of their problems and the reasons for their problems on the preceding generation or the upcoming generation. I'm sorry. And so it's like, oh, this generation, these youngins it's their problem or it's this. It's like, yeah, but you have to understand, like, you people are supposed to be the ones teaching this generation. So if they fuck up, it's because you fucked up.
And
so
God bless you. That goes so much into the point you were making the other night.
Yeah.
It's like, then we are no better than the evil or the despot.
Right. And it's like, look, there's a difference between making an honest mistake and perpetuating absolute garbage. And it's like, an honest mistake is, hey, like, I forgot to turn the lights off in the house. I apologize. Perpetuating garbage is like, oh, well, I guess these kids they're going to listen a lot better if we just continue beating them with a belt. It's like, well, that's why people stop listening to you. like, dude, I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but what I can tell you is there are things that work and there's things that don't work. And if you want to talk about people, and this might come across really bad, but the United States did a better job at winning Japanese prisoners of war over and getting information when they put them up in nice houses and hotels and catered to them to get information, because people who are treated well and are asked questions and asked why they do what they do, and there's an opportunity to teach versus always an opportunity to beat, you have a better chance of getting people to come and see your side. And when it comes to kids, and I know this might sound bad, but kids form a rebellious streak. I mean, we've all been kids. We form a rebellious streak when we're told not to do something. Generally, we're going to do it.
I just got to stop you right there, because the perfect segue is, and I just was writing a note, and I just don't want you to get too far afield from that. So how is it? So like, again, when we're children, each and every one of us, no matter your generation, you wanted to get an extra cookie. You wanted to stay up late. You didn't, want to do your chores, but we all did it, right? And again, and maybe every generation is a little different. So to your point, Jeremy, but it seems nowadays, and the note I wrote down is, I wrote groups, generations that blame everyone else, or have an excuse, as opposed to, all right, I did eat all those cookies. We're kind of, and I think that's going to be very important for, interfering with democracy in order to save our democracy. Because if you want to talk social media, whatever, like, so how does that happen? And how do we overcome this problem when we've got a group of people, to include people in their 30s? And look, honestly, Paul, BCP, I'll throw us under the bus. There's people within our generation that I'm surprised.
And older than you.
Who are the same ways. And I'm just like, okay, that wasn't like that in the 80s. What the hell just happened here? So did we all just drink, too much fluoride? Is it like 5G? Is it, is it an alien virus? But something is amiss here. And sorry, Jeremy, because you just nailed it right there.
Yeah, no. And I was just going to say, like, look, like, there's too many people that are, they're too interested in beating instead of too interested in teaching why you should or shouldn't do something. And it's not to say that there shouldn't be a punishment for a negative action or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. But if you really want to fix certain things, especially when you have the generational blame, as I call it, then you have to start by one, evaluate yourself. Do you even know what you're talking about? Because if you don't know what you're talking about, you should fix that. But then
hang on. But isn't the first thing of fixing it is to properly identify that the role you may have played in? Like, this goes into NATO, this goes into international conflict.
If we take the 12 steps of AA, that's how you can fix problems. Like, there's a reason that they're there. Like, what's the very first thing? Identify and acknowledge that there exists a problem. So most people can't look in the mirror. Most people can't look in the mirror and admit that it's them.
I'm sorry, I was talking too much over you. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that most people can't look in the mirror and acknowledge that it starts with them. Like, it's not your son or daughter's fault all the time that you can't do something. It starts with you. You should be setting the example. So we can get way too far afield. I'm going to stop it there, but I think you get the point that.
But that is a great segue, and so again, we unintentionally brought us in here into the gist of it. If we're not willing to look in the mirror and admit that our own culpability, hey, I could be better at this, or I should have been much more of an advocate, or I should have been more outspoken, or I should have whatever it is. But if we just keep laying in the blame and the feet of this other generation, again, I that video of that girl just keeps coming to my mind. That poor girl, you could just see the distress, and she's like, I want to do good, but God dang it, here's the obstacles I'm faced with. So if we don't turn around and say, okay, hang on a second, how did we create this situation where she's like going through a mental health crisis because we've created a world in which she's supposed to, again, then social media and all this other kind of crap, but she can't even, work 2 jobs and barely afford rent. So I like what you said there, Jeremy. So, now, if we're not, so before we even get into the gist of it, because we are going to try to come up with a solution here of what to do going forward. But I think Jeremy just came up with it. Is if we are not willing to look in the mirror and say to ourselves, hey, well, what have you done? Like, I love it. Somebody criticized the video. I'm like, are you out shooting videos? Are you getting out there and exposing yourself and trying to get other people engaged? What are you doing? it's so much easier. Jeremy, you said this so much better earlier. It's so much easier. And I don't know if you use the word destroy. It's so much easier to criticize and destroy than it is to try to do something positive and get out there and foster that positivity.
Dude, it's always easier to destroy than it is to actually create. So, like, look, I mean, in the end of the day,
I don't know why that just made me think. That just made me think of abortions. I'm sorry. I don't want to sidebar, but that's what my brain.
But the thing of it is like it's whether it's abortion or whether it's something else. Like it's always infinitely easier to destroy something because it takes little effort to destroy something. It takes a lot of effort not only to build something but to maintain something. Right. So like the maximum amount of effort actually isn't necessarily the building of something. To build something it's difficult, but it's not that difficult. It's harder to maintain something that's good and has foundation and has a basis for something than it is. Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
No, but I'm just smiling. I'm so happy that we went in this. I got to tell one quick story and then we'll come down to BCP, but like sustainment, right? It's so much. Yeah, it might take time and effort to create something, but once it's created, right, the real, and I already know where I think Jeremy's subconscious is going with this. It has to do with the Constitution. It's what's really difficult is sustaining it, is to keeping it from being eroded or destroyed. And I'm just going to tell a quick little stupid story. This is in one of those, overseas theaters, and somebody came up with a bright idea of putting me and a couple guys on a hilltop. You can already think of some movies where guys go on to hilltops in some of these locations. And I just remember him saying, like, dude, the locals know every rock. They we go up there, like, and I started asking these questions, like, well, how are you going to resupply us? How are you going to, let's say we become troops in contact. How are you going to support us? How are you going to exfil us? Medevac, under duress, not under duress, getting overrun, not getting, like, there's all these things. How are we going to sustain this operation? How are you going to give us new batteries? How are you going to give us new food? We already know that we'll just be shitting in little bags and we'll just carry it on a rucksack. But you didn't think about that, the guy or gal who came up with this idea. And I love, because that's exactly it, Jeremy. I think the thing for 2024 for me is going back to the basics, which is like, okay, great idea. How do you sustain it? What effort is going to be required to keep this going, right? Or what's the effort that's going to be required to even get it started? And then what is it going to take? What type of batteries are going to be required to keep this going?
Well, and just to kind of add one more thing, and then we'll toss it down to Paul, but it makes it increasingly harder to want to sustain something that has a basis of justness, that has a basis of morality, a basis of principle, a basis of even tradition. In a society that has become so disposable, everything we have is made to be disposed. And people can argue the idea of recycling. Well, if we truly recycled things, we would be reusing these things. We would be implementing things. We would do the best that we can, again, to maintain these things, because when you recycle something, you can take something that's far beyond its date and take the parts from it and revitalize the thing that you have. So look, we're in a disposable culture, whether that's disposable morality, disposable products, disposable life, disposable faith, disposable relationships. It's all disposable. When you put no form of worth on something and you devalue something that should have an immense amount of value, dude, what do you expect from a society that's become so wrought with just mediocrity and not caring?
That was almost like a non sequitur ending there, but like, I think maybe you just turned yourself back down to 3. I think you felt yourself about to hit 11. You were starting to reach it, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, you went like, I'm done.
I just know that if I keep going, it's just going to be the same thing. So,
all right, BCP. And I apologize to you and everybody else, again, trying to learn this behind the scenes. I just sent them both a message. So I'm trying to look at the camera, but I still got to look at them for body language and stuff. But I'm trying to look at the camera. Well, where my mic is, it blocks off part of the software.
Yeah. And
Paul had sent me a private message like, hey, I want to follow up on something Jeremy said about education. And now I'm like 5 minutes behind. So hopefully I didn't bring you over there, Paul. What do you got?
It's all good. It's all good. So I have Mark. I will not type it in there because I can't read it unless I put my head up front. So I have 4 points to make. So first one, you were talking about batteries. Have you ever purchased a drill and it lasted nice, and then the drill, the battery dies, and then that drill's outdated, and you need to buy something. And I know Home Depot tried that with Ryobi or whatever they do. So there are options now. But when I'm talking about when I first got into cordless drills, if you bought that, you were done. And that's why, if you are in a current situation where, even Craftsman does it, they all have the same batteries for different devices. That's because people like me absolutely blew a gasket with them that said, I spent hundreds of dollars with you and now I can't use it because you don't make the batteries anymore. So again, I think that was one thought that just crossed my mind. Second, Jeremy, with education. So one thing I want to say, parents are one generation technically away from their children that can educate them. So just to use me as an example, my parents were boomers and I'm a Gen Xer. And I know, I don't like to generalize, and I tend to generalize and I hate it. But at the same time, I just want to just be honest with you. So when I was being educated by the one generation before, which was the boomers, they tried to influence me. I've mentioned it on previous podcasts. They absolutely tried to push politics. This was in the 80s. And they tried to push politics on me. And we were, our parents, it depends. Maybe if your parents agreed with them, you would have been okay with it. But my parents didn't agree with them. They weren't radicals. And again, the most radical generation in the history of our country, at least as far as, anti-American, were the boomers. Okay, not all were. I'm not trashing all of them, and I'm not even trashing the ones that were. But you look at people like Hillary Clinton and, Eric Holder and all those. I don't even know if he's old enough, but Obama, all those, they're all radical leftists from the boomer generation. Yep. So, they're educating our children. After our children are done, guess what happens? Well, the next generation, the generation just doesn't automatically change because parents and kids are there. It goes over decades. And these boomers have been able to, and again, try and get to manipulate children into believing their beliefs. And you may say, well, why didn't conservatives do that? Well, I was getting a job. Why would I want to be an educator when everybody that educated me that I saw that was honest was a leftist? So I don't want to be in there. I am later in life because I'm teaching professional stuff, but they absolutely try to do that. So what happened? We branched off through the 80s and got Gen X. I'm sorry, millennials. And those boomers are still educating them. And the only ones left of the boomers that are doing that are the radicals. So they were able to push this stuff on them. They made baby steps. That's what they do. Remember, back in, what was it? I don't know if it was Woodrow Wilson or something, but back that far with the, universal health care. They waited 100 years to get that. They are persistent, these radicals. So, that ended up being, that's why, generations are this way. Now, why is Gen Z coming around? And again, I know we disagree on this, and that's fine. I'm perfectly fine with this. And I don't want to generalize because not everybody there's plenty of radicals in Gen X with me. So, but why is this happening? Gen Z is experiencing the hell that Obama and Biden have brought to us and the handcuffing of Trump. We have basically had 16 years of leftist policies that are influencing our country. And Gen Z is coming around saying, whoa, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're this guy, this color, this age. You guys are wrecking our country. We're going to vote for somebody that's going to change whatever the hell you're doing. So
that young girl, and see, just real quickly, and hope, man, maybe for somebody who's watching it as well, because I'm not really down with the whole whatever the title is. But so that young girl in the video I'm talking about, she keeps coming to my mind. She was probably 23 23 to 25. Is that Gen Z or is that a different generation now? What would she be?
25 Gen Z.
Is that Gen Z?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Well, no, I'm just bringing it because to your point, they are starting to wake up and they're starting to be like, WTF. So sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to clarify what kind of age group, because I'm not good with the whole boomer Gen X. I really don't follow any of that shit. Just like, you could tell me you're Sagittarius and I'm like, okay, I think that's the bull. Yeah. So continue, Paul.
Yeah. So, I don't mean to rant so much, but I've lived it and I see people living it now, even as an outsider. The last thing I'll say is back to what Mark was talking about with a disposable society. Decades ago, those inkjet printers, you bought them, I'd give it to you for $100. But the cartridges to replace the ink would cost you $120 the next time you had to buy it.
Yep.
I know I'm exaggerating, but it was almost that bad.
Oh, it was not by much.
You would throw it away and buy a new one for $99 because it was cheaper than just buying a darn ink.
Yep.
So we are a disposable society. It's sad. And, even moving to electrical cars. And I won't go on long. I know I could go off on a tangent here, but I won't go on long. Batteries in those electrical cars are going to either be recycled or thrown in a dumpster. If you have a carbon-based or petroleum-based vehicle, it burns it up. It's gone. It's never going back into the earth. So you can recycle the metal that was part of that car. That's more environmentally friendly to me. I'm sorry, but I don't want batteries in our landfills.
Well, and
I just got to throw this out there. I know somebody who has a Tesla, and while I will hands down admit to Elon Musk, the power ratio to the tires is phenomenal. I've driven it 2 or 3 times, and I'm here to tell you, 0 to 60, it's pretty badass, right? It's way better than any combustion engine because of how the power. But to Paul's point, well, at what price? And then again, well, if we really are conservatives, conservationists, and we believe in the planet stuff, but we should save that. But I think that could be its own little episode because we could talk about wind power, turbine, but maybe we should do that as a separate. So, hey, if you're watching or listening, leave us a comment. Should we talk about this whole, I don't know if it goes into, global warming, climate change. I love how that's using the title of an object to describe the object. Well, of course there's climate change. We're in northern Minnesota. This year is right now up to this point, it's pretty mild. But last year there was already 6 feet of snow. So climate changes. Duh. I mean, it's oh, what's a pen? Well, a pen is a pen-like instrument that does pen-like things. Come on, man. You can't do it that way, So I don't know. Leave us a comment if you want us to talk about that in a future episode, because I'd like to, if he's willing to do it. I don't know if he wants to out himself as a Tesla owner, but I think, Paul, what you just said right there, that just kind of goes into the whole thing, which to me ties into Jeremy. We all have to be honest about this. We have to look ourselves in the mirror and ask what we're really doing. And, just same thing with the and all that bullshit. Notice how that's starting to come back right now too. And I'm now trying not to segue into that. Well, maybe that'll come up in the, we've got to interfere with democracy in order to save democracy conversation. But you can already see it. You can already see it happening, right? Yeah, and then so BCP, I saw your note. Now I saw it.
I absolutely mistyped that. Mike, I'm trying to type something to you.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, and I don't think there's a single one of us right now, or even that who's ever been on the podcast, that doesn't look towards alternative sources of energy. I think we're all smart enough to be if that can work, and when we can get to the point where that can work, that might be something that we should consider. Jeremy and I have talked about this. Jeremy, you brought it up during the live stream. The whole thing about dude, did they really just discover fusion? And can it be
successfully created fusion, not once, not twice, but 4 times?
And how
4 times, and that's a big deal.
So go back and watch our live stream. It was a little bit of fun. What was that? 3 hours, not a whole lot of drinking, but we were kind of all over the place. That was why we're doing it with the live streams. But Jeremy brought that up. It's hey, if we really believe in this stuff, and I think the 3 of us do, then that's a legitimate conversation, but if you're going to talk about incandescent light bulbs or turbine, like, dude, you've got to come to that with some proof and some evidence that this is actually going to be better for the environment and it's going to be better for society. And because those aren't the same things. And that's a conversation that we as a society, then a constitutional republic, need to have, and you could take that analogy and apply it to any other facet in life, whether you have kids, don't have kids, your friends, your neighbors. Like, okay, great. You want to build a new, the homeowner association wants to build a new road in here. Like, okay, why? Well, here, I'll turn it into personal things. Jeremy knows what I'm talking about here. Duluth suddenly, the state of Minnesota last year realized that they have overtaxed the Minnesotan taxpayers by, what was it, Jeremy? $1 billion. It was a huge amount.
Something like that. It was a pretty good amount.
It's a pretty good. And then instead of issuing a refund check to the citizens who pay taxes, they're just, well, we got the money, we're just going to spend it on shit. Here in Duluth, they just built the stupidest traffic circle. Like Europe would be embarrassed. Like Germany would be like, dude, like we don't even do that.
I'm pretty sure that we have more roundabouts in probably a 15-mile area than most places in Europe at this point. Like I'm pretty sure we have like 5 in the area, in the city of Duluth. Outside of maybe London, I don't know who the fuck else in Europe has that many in a 15 square mile area. Well, it's ridiculous.
Maybe Jeremy was politely telling me just to stop going down the rabbit hole, but
I had to just throw that in. But
it's a good one. But my point just being is, like, all of the construction, all the taxpayers' dollars that go to do something that, there's one that when you cross the Bong Bridge into Wisconsin, from Minnesota to Wisconsin, that's a good traffic circle. That's a large traffic circle. That's a European style traffic circle. It makes sense. The one up on, by Hawks Ridge here in Duluth, it's absolutely retarded. It's stupid. It was a waste of money. And for what reasons? So I'm just kind of bringing that out there, as we're talking about this. Like, that is not good stewardship. That's not a good use of your money. So 2024, boys, kind of a abrupt segue. Well, actually, no, let me bring one more point up, and then I'll do my abrupt segue into, in with the new boss, same as the old boss, because this is what the old boss is. The old boss is doing this kind of stuff with your tax dollars. You're getting taxed, inflation, tax, whatever, and then some unelected official decides, well, let's just put a $500,000, could cost $1 million. I don't even know, but it's at least 500. Let's just go put a stupid roundabout in there where it wasn't necessary.
They put these in the country, Mark.
Yeah,
the country where barely anybody goes through, and they're like, "This is a good idea." No, it's not.
No.
Nobody asked for this.
No, there was no, and then to your point, Jeremy, as we get into the, new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah.
Did anyone actually do any studies? Did they look at accident reports or incident reports, or some viability study, or an environmental impact study? Like, nope. We got extra money, and I'm going to show how progressive I am. I'm going to put a roundabout right here, even though it's. So I just drove through it today, and the person in front of me was confused and came to a stop. They're in the roundabout and they stopped. They weren't sure what I was going to do. That was either because they were confused, or they've had so many people who think that, well, if I get into the roundabout first, then I'm in the roundabout and I have the right of way, as opposed to, well, there's the person to my left, they're already in it, I have to yield to them. Nope, because it's Minnesota. Like, yield signs, if you aren't from Minnesota. Now I'm going on a little bit of a diatribe, or rabbit hole in this. But Minnesotans have no idea what a yield sign means.
A suggestion.
It means I get to drive into the freeway, and whether I almost cause an accident or do cause an accident, it's your fault because I was entering the freeway. Yeah, but you had a yield sign. Yeah, so it's that kind of thing. Hey, one thing I wanted to bring up before I lose my point, going back to what Paul was talking about. When you were talking about they play the long game. So, communist China and the Russians, not just from a political perspective, but also from a cultural perspective, they look at things generationally. They look at the long horizon, right? We as Americans, And I think it's becoming worse. And hopefully that'll get brought up and as we get into, old boss, new boss. We don't have that ability. And Paul, when you brought that up, that was really interesting to me, because I immediately wrote down, just think about this since when you were a kid, and you're right, the generation before us, because I'm almost the same age as you, they were the radicals, and that's where it really started happening. And now here we are, I don't know how you want to say that, 4 generations later, and it's really taken effect. But if you look at this, think about this. So anyone watching and listening, tell me where I'm wrong. Tech spaces, education, law enforcement, military, and government, big umbrella right there, but all of those spaces, social media, Hollywood, literature. See how this continues? Dude, that is the prevalent ideology and message. Mm-hmm. I better said education. Oh yeah, I did say education, because that's, and that's what's happening. That's what's going on. You can't have a podcast like this and then try to say, hang on a second, are we doing good or are we doing bad? Should we slow this down? Where are we screwing up as the adults? Are we setting up the future for our kids? I think, to Paul's BCP's point, no, the generation before, again, that boomer generation, I guess, dude, that was like an incredibly radical generation, and they are willing to, and they're seeing the effects of it. They're seeing the results or the positive rewards. Like, dude, look at Dave Chappelle already getting lambasted for telling a couple trans jokes. I saw a couple clips. They were pretty funny jokes. Those were just jokes. If he would have told that, he tells all kinds of jokes about white people. I'm not offended. It's pretty fucking funny. Anyway, I just had to throw that out there, back to what you just said, Paul, because they are
not all of them. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that entire generation. Just want to be clear.
But quite a few, especially the people in those spaces that
in the education space. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Colleges especially.
Yep. And Hollywood, most news periodicals, literature, again, and that can, social media, that's why everybody hates Elon Musk. They loved Elon Musk up until he took over Twitter and said, yeah, I'm not cool with that stuff, But, all right, so here we go. We're at an hour. I think this is a good time. That was, I think, necessary conversation, but let's get into it. Let's get into the final 30 minutes of the podcast. Let's get into okay, so what do we do? We're going to try to outline, spell out an issue, right? We think there's this issue. The title kind of says it all. 2024. In with the new year, same as the old year. That's my weird way of saying, and that's what everything that we just spoke about kind of brings to the surface. Is there really any change on the horizon? Is there anything that seems to you that it really is going to be better in 2024? I've seen some people talking about this. I personally haven't seen them substantiate any of because wishful thinking isn't an argument. That's just wishful thinking, right? So I'm just going to, right before we started, there you can freeze frame it and read my horrible writing. But I'm just going to read this off real quickly, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy and Paul, see where they want to go. But in with the new year, same as the old year. Here's just some of the things I've already seen in the last couple of days. Motorcycle and vehicle gangs continue to terrorize the streets of our cities. And when people try to speak out or do something against it, just like with retail theft, then they get fired, they get in trouble. Once beautiful cities, now have, and again, I'm not making this up. This is all real. We can pull some of this stuff up. Once beautiful cities, beautiful American cities now have poop maps or fecal, hey, don't go to this street. There's like 3 things, diarrhea on it, right? Everybody. So here, this is recently in France. Sorry to throw the great people of France under the bus. I did some stuff with your DGSI and really got nothing but respect. But here's the deal. Everybody at the Arc de Triomphe filming the ball dropping instead of watching the ball and experiencing all these people and the beauty and the majesty. Everybody had their stupid fucking cell phone up and filmed.
Mark, there used to be a point to where we just lived in the moment as opposed to recorded the moment, and that's a defining difference between generations. I'm old enough.
No, Jeremy, let me just finish, because dude, that wasn't just young people. That was people, again, from my age, your age, even old, and everybody was just filming that shit as opposed to living in the moment. You're absolutely right. All right, I already mentioned him, Sam Bankman-Fried. They just dropped charges against him under the auspices of we wanted to have a fair and speedy trial. No, it's because the charges you dropped had to do with bribery. And if it would have went to trial, then it would have come to, what's that called again? They have to bring everything up to the surface. It's not exposure. Oh, discovery. It would come out in discovery where all that money went. And actually, it's open source information right now. You can see where he made his donations. And there's some Republicans, because, look, Republicans, half of them are just rhinos or Democrats, anyway. But that's our justice system in America. That just happened, right? Dude, here's a guy who's been donating millions of dollars, stealing millions of dollars from people to donate it to the wealthy political class. And they work the DOJ to drop charges. He might still go to jail, but he'll be in the same place. His jail cell will make my house look like, a hovel. Yep. Hunter Biden not being charged. And I tried to do this mashup. So here, I'm going to do this right now. I tried to do this mashup of all the Democrats during the Trump era talking about if you ignore a congressional subpoena, you're guilty and all these bad things should happen. So here, this ties into social media. So give me a second here. So I'm not going to see you guys for a second. So I just typed it in on YouTube, ScrewTube. But boy, isn't it funny? Look at all the dates on this as I scroll down. None of this is modern. And this is what comes up on the first page. There's some things here, but this is all 2 to 4 years ago, right? And then there's Republican hypocrisy mixed in there. They're not even showing you all of these montages or these mashups of some smart people who've done some really good little video editing to illustrate the hypocrisy of the Democrats. Oops, sorry, I screwed that up. The hypocrisy of the Democrats. You can't even find that on social media. So that kind of ties into, in with the old new boss, same as the old boss. January 6th, don't even get me going on this. We've got political prisoners. We really have a two-tiered system of justice. We've become a third world country. Yeah, you want to argue January 6th is an insurrection, then first define what an insurrection is, and then we'll have a conversation. This current administration just came out today and blames the border crisis on Republicans. Well, Republicans aren't in charge. Then you got Colorado and Maine. So this is where matter of fact, I should end with that. I'm going to end with that. You got a bunch of liberals in higher education that are unwilling or unable to denounce genocide. They're unwilling to denounce it. Well, we got to put that in context. We don't have to put that in any context. I mean, you don't rape and kill women and children. I mean, you don't do that. The CIA, my former alma mater, I left there for a reason. Think about all the stories about Anthony Fauci visiting there without being on the logs. Why is Anthony Fauci working with the CIA and visiting the CIA anyway? The whole Russian disinformation and the 51, intelligence officials. There's reports coming out about this and how much bullshit's going on there. So there's some serious shit going on within all and then I could mention everything about the FBI. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of issues going on within our leading government institutions. So there's some real issues. And then my last one, and then just what's going on with Colorado and Maine, and apparently 20 other states are just waiting to see what happens. Who just arbitrarily, a man's not been, he's not even been accused of, he's been accused of, but there's no criminal case. He hasn't been convicted. And Jeremy, I know you might like this, and this is how it all gets started. Yep. I'm not even sure if the 14th Amendment applies to him as the president anyway. But then you just got some unelected official saying, yeah, but I don't care. I saw some YouTube videos and he's got to come off the ballot. I've got to, in order to save democracy, I have to destroy democracy. Yep. All right. That is the gist of it for everyone watching and listening to this. Yep. And this is what we're going to talk about here. And this is where it's probably going to get a little bit spicy. So the real question is, so what do we do? It's clear that there are evil forces at work within our country and other countries. And they're on both sides of the aisle. If you think this is a Republican rant, then just stop watching, because you're already missing the point. It's both sides of the aisle. Lindsey Graham is no different from Nancy Pelosi. They're the same freaking animal. One just has an R and one has a D. It's the same fucking animal. And those creatures, unfortunately, occupy most elected and unelected positions within our bureaucracy. So what do we do? What do we, as just the normal human being, the normal, hey, I just want to be free. I want to be left alone. You know, I don't care what you do in the privacy of your bedroom, but I don't have to pay for that. And don't rub it in my face and don't teach it to my kid. And I shouldn't have to pay taxes for this, and this. And then something that Jeremy's really big into, and I absolutely agree, you know, and we just did it, Jeremy. So here again, I didn't even write this one down. I just remembered it right now. Yep. We just decided unilaterally, without going through Congress, that we're going to give aid, more money to Israel. Didn't go through Congress. The Biden administration just decided that we're going to give more aid to Israel. Didn't go through Congress. All right, boys. I hope you guys have the hot sauce from the other night, but what do we do then?
I'll let Paul go first because he wanted to say something before I got started. So,
all right. Yeah. Before I go to Jeremy, I have one thought here. 2024, second verse, same as the first.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Very, very profound, Paul. Very mysterious and profound. That's...
Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because from the conversation the other night, there's a saying that says, as much as things change, they stay the same, right? I think that that's a saying that I've thought about for several years, and I think about it in which it applies. But that's neither here nor there. What I am going to provide is a quote by George Washington in his evaluation of factions and parties and stuff like that. I want, as I read this quote, I really want you, the viewer, to sit and think and ask yourself questions more predominantly of why you support a party, why you support a person that's part of a party, and more or less why you would allow that party to do things that you don't like the other party doing. So, George Washington, the alternate dominion of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later, the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty.
So just for everybody, if you're not picking up what he just put down, this was Jeremy's main argument. So when I was asking these guys the other night, I'm like, well, so what do we do? So there's this growing trend or movement out there amongst the kind of more conservative or Republican side of, well, if they're going to remove Trump from the ballot, then let's just remove Biden from the ballot. And so Jeremy, once you started reading that, I did that, like, oh yeah, I remember that from the other night. But think about that. I mean, do you want to expound upon that? So again, when you first brought that up, it was in the context of, okay, well, what do we do? So before anyone watching, don't get ahead of your skis. We're going to get there. But so the first question was, well, what do we do? Right. Yep. And I brought up, well, here's what some people are, espousing, they're proposing. And then Jeremy went all George Washington on me. Jeremy, you want to try to give everybody a little bit of flavor behind that?
Yeah. So essentially, anybody who's ever studied the Constitution or more or less the founders would understand that George Washington vehemently abhorred the idea of parties and or factions. He absolutely said that they would be the ruination of this nation because it would create great divisiveness and is a effectual way to essentially ruin the liberty of the public or the people. And I am inclined to agree. What you see is petty quarrels and faction squabbles in which it becomes less about the liberty of the people, and it becomes more about this party can't do this, but yet we're going to do it to them. And if we do it, then it's okay. But if they do it, it's not okay. And it becomes a tit for tat thing. But what people don't see is in each of these things, we nod in agreement to these things, because what we're told is it's going to be a temporary measure, in that it certainly would not be used for, our negative disposition, but it would be, a positive thing. But look, in the end of the day, what factions and parties are very good at is they're very good at pulling your purse strings, pulling your heartstrings, and making you believe that they're going to do the things that they say they're going to do. And to effect, they do, in some cases, do some of those things. They have to, in order to keep getting reelected. However, the despotism comes in when we allow them to pursue actions that would violate even their competitors' liberty. Something that was vehemently abhorred by our founders. Look, we should not deprive even our enemies of liberty. That's what makes us the nation that we are, because we value liberty so much that we would not deprive our enemies of liberty. That even means our domestic opposition. So when we look at
now, just real quickly, and just, we can't repeat that conversation, but when you brought that up the other night, I can't remember if it was me or Paul or both of us echoed in almost simultaneously. But look what we did to Japanese Americans in the internment camps in World War II. So if somebody right now is listening to this and saying, Jeremy's just, flapping his gums and that's all constitutional mumbo jumbo. No, history. If we use real language and we don't, and that's another argument right there. Language is being distorted. Because if we can't agree on a common word or a common idea, well, look how much easier it is to lie or obfuscate what really happened. Look, to me, there's two big. We've got some, some sores and some blights on our history, but the two biggest ones are obviously slavery and then what we did to the Japanese Americans in World War II.
Sure. And that's notwithstanding what we've done to our own people.
I was just going to say, you could throw. Well, those were our people, right? Those were Americans
outside of what we did to them. Yeah.
But then you could take everything from January 6th and then work your way backward. To look. I'll even come out and say it's the Branch Davidians. In Waco, like whether you want to think this way, one way or the other. I'm not supporting them. I'm not a crazy cultist. But that's not how our legal system works. That's not how we are supposed to operate. And that we'll save that for a separate time. But now, Jeremy, to your point, and I think this is where, some people might think again. I mean, not get it. So I've got this thing, and now folks identify as either Republican or Democrat. So to your point, we're so fractionalized, or factionalized. That word would work too. You're either on my team or F you, and I'm totally opposed to you. Look, we're losing our sense of, what's the word I'm looking for, BCP? We're losing our sense of, it's not proportionality. We're losing our sense of commonality. We're losing our common sense, maybe.
It's our identity as a country.
Yeah.
We're losing our identity as a country. I mean, it's crazy.
Well,
and I just want to say that there is no such thing as constitutional mumbo jumbo, and anybody watching will know this is where we start to get a little bit, crazy with each other, not necessarily agreeing, right? So the Constitution is the Constitution. There's no mumbo jumbo. Anybody that says that, you don't believe in this country.
So bringing it back to Redbeard, because I know he's got and this is how it all kind of caught on fire, but you just nailed it. Yeah. So that's that common ground. The common ground is the Constitution. The common ground is freedom. I've been saying this on Centerline Systems. We've been saying it here in this podcast. Dude, if freedom loving boys and girls, I don't give a shit if you want to have more, you're more into unions than you are free trade, whatever. Yep. That's something that we as adults can work through our legislative and through our existing system. But freedom, all the way back to Jeremy's points near the beginning of this podcast, boy, the moment we stop taking that seriously, the moment we stop fighting for that every day of the week is exactly why we're 2024 in with the new year, same as the old year. These are the battles the struggles, the fights we're going to have this year, because we've unfortunately, this is where these guys kind of got me to agree with them. We've let this happen, right? So Jeremy, to your point, again, we've moved away from liberty and freedom and values, and we've got into my side versus your side. Now, I still want to get back into what are we supposed to do about it, but I want to give you one more chance to. You did the George Washington, and I hope we did a good job of bringing that back around full circle.
Yeah,
so people understand why that's important. Because you can't be thinking vengeance. You can't be thinking. Look, I'll just
again easier to destroy than it is to build.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we can sit there and destroy the opposition, but what do we gain? We don't gain anything. I mean, if anything, the only thing we do gain is a quicker road to our own ruination, because surely that which we do to them, they're going to return twofold. It always happens that way when it comes to tyrants and despotism.
And then it's just going to cascade into a series of pendulum swings like, oh, we suddenly stole the election. Now we're in charge. And now there's 24 Supreme Justices. And now you stole the elections and you're in charge. Now there's 32 Supreme, whatever. It's just going to be a continuing cycle of, action and reprisal and action. I mean, and more importantly, to what you and Paul just said, and this is where you guys converted me. Dude, that is not in the spirit of liberty. It's not in the spirit of freedom. And it sure as hell is not in the legal spirit of our Constitution, period.
And speaking of our Constitution, there's a lot of people that want to discredit the Constitution. First off, the Constitution is not a living document. It's not. That's factually false. If you go back and you do your studies and you actually go through the time and effort to research it, you will know that it is not a living document. That is a conversation for another time. And if we want to go over that, we can go over that someday. But tonight's not the episode to do that, because there's a lot to that. But I just want to, there's a lot of people that want to say that our Constitution was just, it's whimsical. It was the amalgamations of men who, of their time, men of their time, and that it doesn't apply to us. Okay, well, how about this though? How about this? The reality of it is that it took 700 years of history and lessons that our founders went back on to actually come up with our Constitution. Now, I'm going to read these things here for you. The first document, the first charter that our founders drew from was the 1100 Charter of Liberties, which asserted the right to property and the right to representation. The second one is the 1215 Magna Carta. No taxation without representation, right to representation, right to due process, right to redress grievances. 1628, the Petition of Rights. No taxation without representation, right to due process, no martial law, nor quartering of soldiers. Directly influenced the 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th Amendments. 1641, Grand Remonstrance. The acknowledgement by the drafters that there is a pattern and intentional subversion of liberty used by the enemies of liberty. The corruption of the courts, infiltration of foreign law, government diminishing property rights, government controlling the church, government creating fiat money, government disarming the people. English Bill of Rights, 1688, encompasses all from before it and was the present day Bill of Rights our founders enjoyed as British subjects. All of these things came before our Constitution. It wasn't a whimsical document. It wasn't something they just thought up. This was 700 plus years of history that our founders understood. It shows you the human pattern of yearning for more and more liberty because they learned from their abusive situation and how to prevent these things. And they continue to affirm that we had rights and liberties. They continue to grow this list of realized rights and liberties that we have naturally. This is very important for people to understand. This is why it's very important that we understand what our rights and liberties are. Because if we don't understand where our history comes from and to whom fought for these, and we don't understand what our rights and liberties are, well, then quite frankly, we are no better than slaves, serfs, and subjects. And we ought to live as we see ourselves. And Paul put something into the description that I saw indicating that through the amendment process it's living, and that's also something that has to be set aside for a different time, because there is points to the contrary of that.
Yeah, it's not living. It is amendable. That's the only. My point was that's the only way to change it.
Yep.
It's not living. You cannot interpret the way we've done. The 14th Amendment is out of control. That's everything. Everything is a 14th Amendment.
But like Mark, how many people even know about those 5 charters? About the fact that it took 700 years of history that our founders looked at in order to come up with even a basic foundation for what would be the Constitution eventually.
So
that it's so important.
I'm going to answer your question by making a statement to the same point. This was actually one of our trivia questions way back in like the first or second generation, right? Like our decade, excuse me, of when we started doing the podcast, when we were doing, here's a question, whoever gets it, we had some free gear and stuff that we were giving away. And I don't think we went in as much detail back then as the previous night. And if you remember, and I'll just say it right now, I geeked out. I mean, because like, I knew some of those. And I think even, matter of fact, it may have been Paul and I actually, I'm like, don't say the answer. And then I think I was like, I think I know 3 of those. I mean, like he's saying there's 5. I was a little unclear myself. Right. And I don't know if Paul, that was the same thing with you, but I do remember we were just talking again, that English Bill of Rights from what was that, 1681 or 1688?
It was 1688.
Yeah. So, okay. Like I want to do a little bit more of my own research because of everything you're saying. Now getting back into the podcast, because I want to give Paul a chance to set up his argument. And I'm sorry, boys and girls, maybe we went a little bit long in the front end. Redbeard's got some stuff he's going to have to bounce. But you'll see where we're going with this. Like you're going to have to come up with your own decision here, right? So actually, I no apologies at all. I think it's set up the way it is. We talked about a bunch of other important things. Now here's the real question. In with the new year, same as the old year. Do you even understand where your rights and everything come from? Because the argument was, should we conservatives in red states start taking? Look, they're doing it to us. Should we use the Ring of Sauron? And that's why the Ring of Sauron's up there in the corner now, or Sauron, the Eye of Sauron. Should we use Sauron's power against Sauron? And I'm not saying I was for that, but I was like, well, we've got to do something. Jeremy, beat me down like I was 12 years old again, getting soap and spanked at the same time.
It's what good friends do.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and I'm like, whoa, slow down, Dragon. I'm not saying, but we've got to do something. And then now this is where I want to come into Paul, because I think Paul and Jeremy were on the same side. And Paul, I don't know if you even have a solution, but yours was like, the question I'm really asking is, well, what do? We have to do something. There's no way we can sit and let evil. I'll use another Lord of the Rings analogy. When Gandalf visits Theoden Hall, and he's talking, and you've got orcs and goblins, and evil is running through Rohan, and the riders of Rohan aren't doing anything about it, and Éomer is ostracized and called a criminal because he's trying to stop the orcs from coming through, their territory. And it's a really dark moment, depending if you watch the live action or if you go and see I think it's 78 or 80 something with Baskin, where they take humans and incorporate that into the animation. I think that's actually my favorite. But this is where Paul was like, I'm like, well, what do we do? We've got to do something, because evil is running rampant through your country right now. And it doesn't seem like, so again, if you think this is a political thing, I'll throw almost every Republican under the bus. They're not doing shit. And that should be alarming to me and you. How is it that the Republicans aren't doing a damn thing? Yeah, well, I got some choked laughter on that one. But Paul, you want to present your kind of, not counter argument, but where you kind of try to calm me down a little bit there when we were talking on Saturday?
I wish I could calm you down, but I would say that the GOP and the Republican Party has been known as the stupid party since I've been an adult, or even a teenager before an adult. They trying to respond to taking Trump off a ballot is stupid. Okay, we all agree that this is unconstitutional. Why would you do that? Okay, second point, Biden is officially the president of the United States. The only thing you can do is impeach him. If you understand the Constitution, that is step one. The Republicans obviously don't understand the Constitution. We can complain, we can bloviate. I'm sorry, I should say they can, but I'm still complaining, because I do believe that he is guilty of some things, but we need to follow the official process. And they're not doing it. They're just grandstanding and doing all this stuff, which they have done, really, honestly, since Obama was elected. And elect us here, and now we need the House, now we need the Senate, now we need the president. We gave it all to you, and you know what you did? Nothing. You guys did nothing. You're horrible. And that's why, I've said it before, I'm independent. But Biden, I almost said Biden, but okay, I did just say Biden needs to be impeached before he can be removed from office. We don't have enough time. We also don't have the votes in the Senate. Okay, Republicans are playing that darn game of the Democrats. Our government is an absolute joke at this point. We are a banana republic, not because of Democrats, but because of Democrats and Republicans. We need some. I wish I had a solution for 2024. And that's why I'm thinking, Trump's the only one. Maybe Vivek has come out and said something that he would not. Those two are anti-establishment. It's obvious that the Republicans and Democrats are hand in hand. That's why you see pictures of the Bushes, the Clintons, and Obamas all together. They're buddies. They're all part of the same thing. I'm not going to call it whatever they call it, but they're all part of the same thing. And we need to be real careful, because I'm not saying that Trump has all the solutions. Trump is he's the enemy of my enemy. That's what he is. Because I'm an independent. I'm not saying he, like I said earlier in the podcast, people are saying if he doesn't get the nomination, they won't vote. Well, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get Joe Biden, and they can put anybody else in his place. We can talk about that another day, but it's crazy.
Well, I think again, is kind of accelerating it here at the end, but like the other point though that you had made the other night that I thought you did a good job on is, you're kind of agreeing with me, agreeing with Jeremy, disagreeing with both, however you want to look at it, right? You're being a little bit more level-headed. I think Jeremy and I, kind of just, what do we do? That was my thing. And Jeremy's like, well, whatever you do, it better not be against the Constitution, but we got to do something. So I think you made a great point, and I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to paraphrase it and kind of maybe let you respond to it and maybe Jeremy as well. But your thing is, well, we've got to do something, but it's got to be constitutional. It can't be that you, and I like this. Okay, go ahead and remove Joe Biden from, the ballots in your states. What does that show? That you're just as stupid and childish as that Secretary of State from Maine? Like, you've just used the ring of Sauron thinking it'll be for good, and it'll just be for evil. You'll be an idiot, and you're playing in their game, which we're not good at anyway. But your point was, and I like this, you were very strong and adamant about this. You're like, dude, there's got to be a counterpunch, and it's got to be constitutional. It's got to be legal. But yes, we definitely need to be punching back right now. Have you guys thought about that at all? And maybe that's so as we kind of wrap this up, we're trying to keep it under an hour and 45. Redbeard's got to bounce anyway. Yeah, and this you can see this will come up again later. But do you guys got something on the counterpunch side of it? Because again, what do we do then?
Yeah,
I agree with you guys now. I wasn't sure a couple days ago on Saturday, but I definitely agree. Removing Joe Biden from the ticket is a stupid move. It would be a bad idea for
and the crazy thing of it is, you guys remember, I'm going to use a really funny analogy, and I think we can all agree with this because it'll go to my greater point. Do you guys remember like the old Hot Wheels tracks to where you had like just one single loop and you had the like little push off thing with the car? Did you guys ever have those, or did you ever have friends? Did you have?
Everybody from our generation knows what you're talking about.
I had that when I was a kid growing up, and it was one loop and it kept going around and around and around once you launched the Hot Wheels vehicle. Well, that's kind of like what taking Biden off the ballot or Trump off the ballot is doing. Is like, it seems really good, and impulsively that's what you want to do, but in the end of the day, you still keep coming back to the same crappy reality that you started, right? Because it creates this perpetual cycle of chaos that actually merits you nothing. Now, in the end of the day, when we go forward into this, and I proposed this to I think both you and Paul, I've said this numerous times on this podcast. We have got to, as individuals, pull up our boots, tie our boots, make sure they're on, put it, hopefully you remember to put your pants on before you put your boots on, because that would be kind of weird. But, hopefully you can get yourself prepped and ready to go. But we have work to do in our communities. And in one area that I suggested very strongly was the sheriff.
Hey, I got a great idea. Sorry. I know let's save that community. Let's save that. Let's do that as another podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, because
all I'm saying is like that is the conversation that we need to be having, and I think we need to set a whole podcast aside for it. But that's my solution, and I've said this numerous times, and I think one of those solutions that you can start to see an immediate effect is with the sheriff, and that's notwithstanding the local leadership and stuff like that. But look, it starts with the community. It goes to the states, and from there, the states have the ability to be the best buffer along with the sheriff to any types of federal tyranny. So if you have a strong state with strong people that are morally inclined, that have principle, that are of good, value, then you're going to have a very, very good outcome in your state, no matter how bad the storm gets in the country. So.
And, I just wrote some notes down. I was thinking, so again, I just didn't want you to go too far, because I actually think we should do that. But as you were talking, you're talking about that loop analogy, right?
Yeah.
I wrote it down as the cycle of chaos. Like, your loop analogy, the cycle of chaos. Well, how do you break out of that cycle of chaos? And where you're kind of going right there. And this goes into Paul's counterpunch. We've got to counterpunch someplace. We have to do something. But if you want to break that cycle of chaos, and I just wrote it starts and ends with, you, the individual, and your community, right? Because you, the individual, by yourself, you're not going to break out of that cycle of chaos.
Right.
You can get enough people in your local community. Now that next tier has to start listening. And if that person or that man or woman wants to remain in power, they're not there for them to be in charge.
Right.
They represent you. So Jeremy,
I'm sorry,
I just got to throw this out there. You got me remembering this, and I think this is where we are all failing. Dude, those people work for us. They really do. No matter how much they want to pretend they don't, because so many of them, that is what they don't think they work for us.
Yeah.
But no, God dang it, they do work for us.
And they're counting on us to be fearful of putting them in their place. So we've got to not be fearful of that, because look, If we can come together and exert the just power that we hold as the people of this country and more or less the people of our states, then we truly do wield the power. And that's what they're afraid of. Is it's not the fact that we so much have the power. They know we have the power. It's the realization that we have the power. So long as we stay stupid and we don't realize that we have the ability to do that, and they can keep us distracted with bread and circuses and all of these different things, and we worry too. That, I mean, look, there's a lot to be said here, but I'm going to end it on this. We also, those of us who are sitting here right now, myself, Mark, Paul, our generations, our primary focus right now is handle the things that we can affect right now, which is mostly local and state things, right? But we have to, our primary directive as it stands right now is the education and providing direction of the future generations, because they are the ones that are going to create the greatest change in this country.
And you can't provide direction if you're not well educated. If you don't know what the hell you're talking about, how can you provide any good direction? And maybe it's some innate, good versus evil type of thing. But when it comes to actual, that's not what the 14th Amendment says, or that's not what he said, or that's not even a crime, or then you have to be educated yourself. And and I love what you just said, because I just wrote down a note, like you were saying they want us kept stupid. My response was like, no, what we're kind of getting at, the eye of Sauron, they want us to be afraid. They want us to be in a constant state of worry, fear, and because what results out of that? Dependency results out of that.
Yes.
Look, somebody might say, Mark, why do you have a gun? Are you afraid of something? I'm like, no, I'm not afraid of anything at all, because I have a gun. So think about that. I'm not afraid of a grizzly bear. I'm not afraid of somebody kicking in my door, because I have the ability to defend myself, even when I physically, I can't outrun even Jeremy right now. And I think I've seen him run before, and he's not a great runner. Actually, you're a pretty good runner, though. I take that back. I think I confused you with someone else, but
thanks. I appreciate that.
But you see my point, though. It's like, well, why do you need that? Are you afraid? I'm like, no, that actually is proving my point. No, I'm not afraid at all. But we have been led into an arena, and again, we can't revisit the whole 4-hour conversation we had on Saturday night, but there was a lot of like sparks, but when it comes down, we're kind of giving you the abridged version. Like, I wasn't advocating that we should pull him off the ballot, but I was advocating we've got to do something, because if we just sit on our hands, we've ceded, we've given up the initiative. We've got to take the initiative back. Jeremy was adamantly opposed to me from constitutional perspectives, and he's absolutely right. But I was belligerent. It's like, but we've got to do something. And then that's when Paul, BCP, came in. It's like, well, hey, you're right. We've got to do something, but it's got to be within the constraints of the Constitution.
And I'll just add this, Mark. People should be asking the question that you asked in order to spark the debate that we had. And the thing of it is that right there is what's going to create that difference.
Just to ask that question?
Well, just to ask a question similar to that, like regarding anything, is in sparking the debate that we had, like people need to replicate something and not be afraid. Like, in the end of the day, how many people like their friends too much to actually take an ardent stand and say, no, like, Mark, I like you, but calm the fuck down for a second and just listen to what I have to say. Like,
and that was actually almost verbatim how it went. Hey, Paul,
but it was good.
Yeah, no, it was great. No, and seriously, and at the end of it, that's why we decided to do this, is because, like, okay, this is what the normal American used to be able to do. Okay, suddenly we all found ourselves in
And
I don't think we hate each other, right?
But we found ourselves in oh, okay,
we agree. We just have minor disagreements, which adults can have.
Weird.
Last I checked, that's not grounds for immediate divorce. Like, oh my God, you don't like cinnamon toast crunch? Oh, you're fired.
I love it. I like golden grams too.
Hey, we're gonna kind of try to stick to it. We're a little bit long. This is twice now. and I already see an area where I can do better in the future, but without getting into that AAR part, Paul, why don't you give us your kind of like your final comments or perspective on the, your position in that argument? Like, okay, I can see where Mark's coming from. I can see where Jeremy's coming from. And then that you were the one who was really proposing the take a breath. We definitely need to throw a counterpunch. We've got to throw a punch in this fight, but it's got to be the right type of punch. And then Jeremy, with your permission, I know you got to bounce, but then after Paul, then we'll come to you for a great outro and then bid everybody a happy 2024. Paul, does that work for you?
Absolutely. I will be brief. We are defending Donald Trump from being removed from ballots because it's unconstitutional. We need to unite and defend Joe Biden from being removed from ballots as well. That way we are consistent. Okay. We are following the Constitution. Both of those methods are illegal. And the fact that Republicans are even considerate shows it drives me nuts. But at the same time, what we need to do is while we say, look, Joe Biden, official process, removing from ballots, we're not about that. We're about the Constitution. Then we need to push the constitutional justification to those that are young, that don't understand it. So they can say, all right, well, you know what? They want to remove him unconstitutionally. The Republicans or the independents want to let them both be on the ballot. And this is why. And pass it on. And maybe that way you grow the population of people that are at least constitutionalists. I don't care if you're a Republican. We want constitutionalists. Well, I'm not giving up on this country. That's not happening. So I'm going to do the best I can peacefully, and I will try and convince others that, hey, you know what? There is hope here, and let's do that. Let's do what we need to do that. And it starts with Republicans getting their heads out of their asses and not trying to remove Biden from a ballot. Impeach his ass. I don't care, but you're never going to convict him, so it's all for show. The same thing that the Democrats did with Trump. They convicted him. They didn't convict him. They impeached him on BS charges. We all know that. They had no hope of conviction. So the fact that they're doing that shows we live in a banana republic, and the Republicans are playing that game. They need to stop it and say, you know what? You did this to us. We're not going to do it to you. Let's train everybody and move on and vote and see who wins. That's it.
You're muted, Mark.
Is that the third or fourth time or fifth time?
Only three. You're doing
it.
It
counts as 5 because, you had a warning before.
Did I? Okay. Well, maybe it's a little bit better than that one episode, but I don't want to just leave my mic on all the time, though. But anyway, to the point you just raised right there, and there's going to be some people who say, well, that's like, they're going to do the like, well, that's a sissy move. And what are we, dude, this isn't a fight where you're just going to come in and just overpower somebody. You've got to think this through. But then to Jeremy's part, you've also got to like trust your heart. And you're like, dude, if the Constitution means anything, then we have to abide by it. And what you just said right there, BCP, I love. Like, we just can't do this. What are we, 4-year-olds like them? But what I liked when you said it the last time, because you kind of, or I can't remember if it was you or me, but like, it's the counterpunch. We've got to throw that counterpunch. And I think coming down on that side, like, no, we're not children like you. That's and we all know it's unconstitutional. There it is. You were bringing up, the impeachments. Everybody, you're right. And I love the smile on your face. Everybody, to include Democrats, know it was bullshit.
Yep.
But they were just like, but we don't like him. And then my final comment before I turn it over to Jeremy, this is what should concern everybody. Dude, they know it's bullshit, and they're still willing to do it anyway. What does that tell you about who's behind the curtain, pulling the strings on people, getting them to do this stuff? Matter of fact, Jeremy, now we're going to have to do this as another podcast because the real issue isn't Antifa and BLM. And there's other real issues back there, and that's the people pulling the strings. So we're all focused right down here on this little breadcrumb bullshit issue. However, this is a big one. This is the make or break the republic issue right here to me. So we got to do something. That's why I'm adamant about it. This is the thing where we will not have a constitutional republic if this goes forward. If this continues like this, we should just disband in both houses and just start all over anew. That would be my thing. Again, peacefully, legitimately, legally, but then neither side of our part, neither side of our government, the Senate or the House, well, to include the executive at that point, if you throw that, none of that stuff's working. So something, well, then that could bleed over to the judicial. I mean, so we're in big trouble. That's my big thing. We're in big trouble.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to,
before you do your outro, can I just do one thing? We're going a little bit long this time. I already saw some areas. I know you got a bunch. I'll talk to Paul and the AR afterwards. I know some areas that I'll do differently next time. We'll get it there. But I just love this quote, and it's coming across. So I'm going to read it right now because I think
I was just about to say it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you do it. Then I just wanted to draw attention to it.
Yeah. So the quote is: "Fear is the tool throughout history for every infringement of the right of the people. It is the argument of tyrants and dictators, and it is the creed of slaves."
And that's where we are. We are living in fear right now. Fear of a guy who might beat my political side because they've got better ideas. I'm afraid of that, and I don't want to lose power. And I don't want to lose the billions of dollars I'll get from this thing or that thing, or, again, I'll get better. There's a meme I saw, and you can go do your own research. Just find it for yourself. But it's, hey, here's all the presidents since Reagan, and it shows what their net worth was when they came into office and what their net worth was when they left office. See, I'm going to get better. I'll have that to bring up next time.
I just want to add,
this goes into fear, and we're being tools. We are allowing people to knowingly use that to control us. And to your point, this is my final comment. To your point, boy, we better stop being afraid. You better take a step outside the door, take a deep breath, and say, "Here I go. All right, sheriff. All right, town council. All right, whatever it is. No, whatever. You got to start doing it."
Yeah, and I'm just going to put out two things here real quick before I do the outro. The first one is the person who from which this quote originated. Her name is Kris Ann Hall. You can find her on Spotify, and I think she might be over on Rumble and a few other places. She's still on Instagram. Check her out. Lady is absolutely fantastic. She's a constitutional teacher. And she also has, and we'll put the link in the description of this video as well. But if you go to www.libertyfirstsociety.com, she offers world-class constitutional courses for a very, very low price. And it's very easy to access. You have access to not only the current library of courses that she has, but also to the ones that are going to be coming up and that are going to be brand new for no extra cost on that. So once you pay, it's a monthly subscription, but it is worth it. I've gone through a number of her courses. She does a fantastic job, and she can explain the Constitution and break it down in ways that even I don't think that I'm able to. She just has a way with doing it. And she is your primary source for liberty and rights-oriented.
Sorry to interrupt, but what was the name? What is her website again?
So the website that you would go to, you can also go to krisannhall.com, but the website that has the courses is libertyfirstsociety.com.
Okay, but does Kris Ann Hall have a gateway over to? You know what? Send me the link.
If you go to krisannhall.com, you should be able to access Liberty First Society.
You're still full screen, so I was doing this behind screen, and I just got to throw this out there. This goes into in with the new year, same as the old year. So dude. What do you think? The first thing about Kris Ann Hall that came up on this, I'm not going to say because I don't want to get in trouble. It was Southern Poverty Law Center. That was
she's a designated risk or whatever. Designated.
But isn't that amazing? Isn't that just funny?
Yep.
It's like, so here's somebody who's actually trying to espouse, teach, educate her fellow citizens. And the very first thing in that search engine search result was a negative thing.
Yep.
Not her actual website.
Yeah.
Like, oh, heaven forbid. But Jeremy, but send me that link. I'll put this in. I'll put this in here. So again, if we want to do the little, resolutions, I'm not joking. I'm going to start actually this whole thing about these 5 documents, in our conversation, and then the again that 1688 English, bill. I'm like, okay, I got to do some more research. I've got to do some more.
World-class education.
Yeah,
it hands down.
And if she provides that, and so I've started following her on I can't remember if it's on Twitter or Instagram, but I'm here to tell you, man, she's like, there's some things where she's come down and she's like, no, you can't do that. Kind of like you. It's like, it doesn't matter if you hate.
She does talk about the language and usage of words as well. So
she's pretty fucking squared away, dude.
Yeah. So all right.
Hang on. Let's give BCP one last chance. We're at 2 hours. We went long, boys and girls. We're going to get better. Seriously, I kind of know what I did wrong in kind of quarterbacking this night. The reason this went long, that's on me. I'll get it. I already see where I made a mistake, so I'll do better next time. But let's get BCP one last comment, and then we'll come to you, Redbeard. Are you okay with that? That's not going to kill your time.
Yeah, it'll give me some time. I got to step away real quick. So Paul, take it away for a second.
All right.
Okay, so I was thinking this might be a Friday Night Live type topic, but since Redbeard needs some time, so I'm looking at Twitter, right? And obviously I'm in technology, I do training, so I'm doing some experimenting with social media, and I have an account on social media with X. I left Twitter a long time ago. It came back, and so in the past, Twitter was great as far as communicating with other people. Then it became this segregated community, because that's what Democrats do. Sorry, that's what they do. The blue checks were actually able to block any of people like me that, I'm not verified. It didn't cost you money back then, by the way, but they would segregate us. So they had the elites and the non-elites. These, I mean, come on, this is communist crap. But so I left after, the Trump election, because I couldn't deal with all the BS back and forth. Again, I was not a Trump supporter, but definitely wasn't a Hillary supporter. So Twitter and Facebook both became garbage. So Mark mentioned social media before. Social media is a cesspool, but it's a necessity to have it. So I created a new X account, and it was under my training ID. And I'm sorry, I can cut it off. I thought you were going to be longer. So I want to pick this up later. I want to talk about my experience with X as a legitimate account and why it was bad. That'll be next Friday Night Live.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was actually just trying to respond to that, Paul. Yeah, no, I think there's been a lot of dangling fruit here that we're going to have to, we'll remember, write it down. But whenever we get a chance to do the next Friday Night Live, we're going to have to bring this stuff up, because social media, that's a huge one right there. And just, if I hear one more person say that they have to destroy democracy in order to save democracy, I don't have any more hair to pull out, Jeremy. I don't know what to do at that point, pull my beard hair out,
Mark,
that's not going to happen.
Mark, you're not alone.
Oh, dude,
mine looks the best, but it's not good.
Hey, to be fair, I shave my head, so
if we all tilt our heads towards the camera, we might actually blind our viewers.
Yeah,
there you go. All right, Redbeard, we're at just over 2 hours. Again, that's on me. I know what I did wrong here tonight. I see my mistake. I'll do better next time. Hey, work in progress, boys and girls.
Yep.
But yeah,
we'll only get better this year.
Yeah. Well, I took us down a road I didn't need to. I should have just started right off with a question. Then we would have been good. Like I wasted an easy 30 minutes. Yeah, but
it worked out though because it drove home the point.
Yeah,
so, it's all relevant.
Yeah, I could have done that better. But
No
all right,
worries.
hey Redbeard.
Yeah.
Paul, you're good on those comments right there. You're gonna say, okay, good to go. All right, Redbeard with the backdrop of Mordor behind you and the Eye of Sauron hovering over you. Take us on out, sir.
Yeah.
Give us that damn good intro.
Look, everybody. Look, we really appreciate everybody that comes in, watches the videos. Like I said, as much as we love to have you here, we would much rather have you going out, learning, and taking what you learn to diffuse that information for the force of good. And Paul, we really, really appreciate having you back. And, you know, I really have to say that it's going to be really nice being able to have you on board a lot more. I'm looking forward to it because you're really going to be fundamental in helping us move forward. And I really appreciate you, you know, taking that opportunity, honestly. Like it really is appreciated. So on that note,
Redbeard, did you see what I just did? Is that why you're laughing?
I saw you take your hat off, but
well, you were talking about Paul, and I was like, yeah, because you're bald and you got a beard.
Well, look, everybody, look, the flame of liberty shall not and will not ever be extinguished so long as there are good people willing to support and defend it. And that means each and every one of you, like Mark always says, you are the resistance. And when it comes down to it, we have to remember that liberty is an ongoing battle. It doesn't stop with one generation or start with another generation. It continues with every single generation. We have to continue the fight because we owe it not only to ourselves, but to our future posterity. So,
and to everybody behind us, everybody who fought behind
absolutely.
us. Yeah.
So look, I believe in you guys, and I believe in Mark, and I believe in Paul. And more importantly, like I believe in myself and what I'm capable of doing. And I have the hope that we are able to make the change that we absolutely need. So I'm a hopeful person. And on that note, I want to send this out on a message of hope. We can make this difference and we can make the change. So on that note, thank you truly, and have a fantastic rest of your evening. And we will see you on the next one.
Yeah, I just got to throw one last add on at the very end. I hope your final words of encouragement turn this title into like a joke. Like I hope you're right. I hope we turn this around. So instead of saying in with the new year, same as the old year, everybody 6 months from now says, dude, this is the best year. This is the year where we turn the corner. I hope you're absolutely right, man. I really do. All right, Paul.
All right, gentlemen.
All right, everybody.
Have a good night.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Be good. We'll see you on the next one. Woo!